Hello, Joshwoakes here with another video, and today we have Sonic 1 NAC Tiny version from the Sonic Hacking Contest 2016. And as you could probably already guess, this was one of my entries from that hacking contest of that year. And I'm gonna be honest here, this particular ROM hack is very kind of not good. Fair enough to some people, and I do agree with some people, this ROM hack of mine was not even that bad. It was actually a pretty good attempt at making a ROM hack, but it does have its issues. Issues with level design, minor mistakes here and there, and just a long other stuff. However, this has issues in terms of programming perspective, because there is one major issue. That's right, there is one major issue or one major bug that this ROM hack has. Believe it or not. Now, before I get into details of what this major issue slash bug was in this ROM hack, I want to explain a few things. One, this ROM hack only has one zone, that being Green Hill Zone, because this is technically a demo or a short version of a ROM hack that is supposed to be developed in 2017, but started early in 2016 due to another ROM hack essentially not making it on time, or it was unable to make it to the hacking contest of that year due to the fact that something happened with that ROM hack. But that's besides the point. The other thing that I want to tell you, the other thing that I wanted to explain is that in Green Hill Act 2 there is this platforming segment that I dubbed as a CGS platforming segment. CGS meaning challenging game segment. In this case, the challenging segment is the platforming segment. And this platforming segment is basically a really difficult platforming segment where you have to be like very precise with your jumping and with your timing of when you jump. Not only that, I made it so that when you reach this segment, when you reach a certain point in this segment, the depth boundary shifts upwards, cutting off the lower part of the level, so that if you fuck up at any point, you fall straight into that death pit. And if you carry on to the other half and then fuck up, you'll find that the depth boundary has shifted up even higher to cut off the rest of the level, and when you complete this platforming segment, it basically goes back to normal. And it is this platforming segment is basically where this major issue is present. Not because of the platforming segment itself, although the platforming segment was quite bad, but it has something else to it. A very major bug that basically breaks the game, or shall I say breaks level events. Now, before I show you the actual bug, I want to show you what actually happens if you manage to complete the CGS challenge without actually dying and triggering this bug. basically, if you complete this platforming segment successfully without dying, which triggers the bug, the game works as intended and progresses normally, and the auto run segment which you just seen basically activates as normal and triggers at the beginning of Green Hill Act 3. However, when you trigger this bug, it doesn't play out like that. As I mentioned before, the bug occurs when you die, and now as you can currently see in the footage, the camera is no longer locked in place, meaning that the death boundary has now reset. And this is essentially what the bug is for the most part, and now as you can see, you can effectively now run on thin air. Yeah. So basically, if you die during this platforming segment, the death boundary resets and allows you to stand on thin air. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, how does that work? Well, let me explain. The reason why Sonic floats on air or stands on mid-air and is able to run about on mid-air is because he's effectively standing on invisible blocks that I placed above the bottom section of the level, which is the part where you initially run across to get access to this platforming segment. And the reason why that's there, it's because when I was designing this platforming challenge, I didn't want speedrunners or cheaters to basically find a way of launching Sonic upwards into the platforming segment and doing all sorts to break the level events. In other words, I was trying to avoid having level events being broken, but as you may have noticed, the level events end up breaking anyway because you can just simply die and the death boundary resets due to a broken level event. But yeah, essentially this invisible barrier that I made out of invisible blocks is kind of representing where the death boundary is supposed to be. But because the death boundary is reset when you trigger this bug, you're basically just simply standing on where the death boundary should be. And yeah, these invisible blocks and this invisible ceiling that was meant to prevent the player from being able to cheat and shoot up into the platforming segment if they somehow manage to get enough speed, kinda has the side effect of this glitch where you effectively just stand on mid-air. Also, as you just saw from the footage, when you trigger this glitch, you can effectively get back in bounds or back into the normal level by glitching through the S tunnels. However, when you do that, you effectively correct the glitch, as now level events function correctly and the death boundary will go back to where it should be when you reach the first checkpoint of this platforming segment. So yeah, that's the one way you can avoid having this glitch be triggered when you complete the level, although it's still kind of annoying. Now for the second part of this glitch or bug or whatever you want to call it. I keep alternating between bug and glitch. Here's what happens when you basically complete the CGS challenge and complete the level with the bug active and without resetting it. as you can see, the auto run segment that was functioning earlier is now no longer functioning. Why? Because of the stupidity of my past self, especially when it came to the coding, because this ROM hacks coding is, believe it or not, just absolute trash. Why, you may ask? Because Sonic 1 NAC was made around the time where I was still learning how to code in assembly for Sonic Rom Hacks, and I was still learning how to use level events. And in this case, I did not use level events very well, and neither did I actually make code that were actually functioning properly. Because for one, I didn't use any routine counters or progression counters for the level events to tell the game which level events have already been played out and which level events should be occurring. And I didn't have any way to save that progress counter because it just simply wasn't there. What's the point of saving a progress counter if it's not used in a level and doesn't exist? What I did instead was try to rely on checkpoint count, aka checkpoint flag, and just some random flags that I made, or in other words, custom flags. And oh yeah, about checkpoints. You may be wondering about checkpoints and this counter for the checkpoints. Well, you see, in Sonic 1, whenever you add a checkpoint to a level, you have to assign it a number. Why, you may ask? Because the way the checkpoint system works in Sonic 1 is that it basically has this number assigned to every checkpoint, and when you hit a checkpoint, it saves that number into the checkpoint flag or the checkpoint counter, which of course, like I just said, is also used as a flag because it tells the game that a checkpoint has been hit and it knows to respawn you at the last checkpoint. However, there is an interesting thing with this checkpoint system. If you hit checkpoint 3, for example, then checkpoints 1 and 2 will be active because the game thinks you've already hit those 2 checkpoints. And not only that, if you don't assign a number to the checkpoint, or you forget to do it, the checkpoint will simply already be activated and will not work at all because the game thinks it's already been activated. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I try to rely on checkpoint flags or checkpoint count, and I'm not sure if this could have eventually worked in the end. For the life of me, I couldn't get it working. Even if I tried to fix the bug afterwards, I couldn't figure out how to get it working, and it seems like relying on checkpoint count just simply does not work. You can use the checkpoint flag to tell the level events, or tell the game which level events to basically trigger based on the checkpoint flag, whether it's set to true or false. You can do that with no issue, but when you try to actually check the number, for some odd reason it just seems not to work, unless of course I was being stupid back then and I was doing it all wrong without realizing. But in other words, essentially I was basically being utterly stupid by trying to rely on things that obviously simply just didn't work, or just simply didn't work correctly. Now, for the second part of the glitch, or the second part of this bug, is how does it affect the auto run segment? Well, the answer to that is simple. It's because a certain flag doesn't get set, and therefore the auto run does not trigger. And you're probably also wondering, why use a flag to control the auto run segment when the auto run can just simply be done with the level events specifically for the Green Hill Act 3? Why not do it like that? Well, again, I was still learning this stuff and I just didn't think about that at the time. And you are right in saying that the auto run code is not a part of Green Hill Act 3's level event code. It's actually a completely different routine, and that's why it needs a flag to be triggered. Now, you're probably also wondering, why didn't the auto run routine trigger in the middle of Green Hill Act 2 if that flag was set? It's simply because I was clever enough to add a check for Green Hill Act 2 in that routine that prevents that routine from activating in unintended levels where it's not supposed to activate. And that's essentially what the bug is. So let's summarize the bug here after I've gone through that lengthy explanation about what caused it. So here's a basic summary of the bug. Basically, the depth boundary resets because level events get broken because of my coding not using methods that I should have used. And then as a result of that level event breaking, a flag doesn't get set. When the flag is not set, it just simply does not do the auto run. And that's basically the bug in a nutshell. However, this is not the only bug in the game. There is a few other bugs which I'll go over. Also, I somehow forgot about this whilst editing this video, but yeah, this bug was fixed later on in development, as you're about to see, as I'm demonstrating here in the updated footage. This bug was mainly fixed thanks to a complete code rewrite for both Green Hill Act 2 and Act 3. However, as you just seen there, you can still somewhat stand at the bottom of the screen, mainly because of the loop-to-loop collision. But other than that, this bug is fixed. And with the addition of fixing that bug with a code rewrite, I also made it so that you can actually now skip this platforming segment for if you can't be asked to do it, or if you're unable to do it. However, in a future update, this platforming segment may just get removed. Now for 3 other bugs that this ROM hack has. Starting with, when you get the instability monitor in Green Hill Act 3, when the instability wears off, instead of playing Act 2 music, it will play Act 1 music instead. This is because I forgot to add 2 lines of code, in other words a check for Green Hill Act 2. And now we have a collision issue as we approach into the platforming segment. If you go into it with too much speed, this happens. Another dumb bug that you may have noticed is that you can walk straight through smashable walls. Again, this is because I deleted a check and forgot to restore it. Oh yeah, the boss fight in this ROM hack. I remember doing something here. I basically made it so that the hit count does not start going down until the ball is swinging. However, if you hit it before that, it would still register the hit, but the count would not go down. This caused people to think there was more hits than there actually was, because they were counting hits that weren't being counted by the game, although being registered. So yeah, that was kind of a stupid thing to do in terms of coding. And wait a minute, is this a simplified boss fight from DLCM, a scrapped build that was meant to be in the hacking contest? Sonic 1 DLCM Sonic Hacking Contest 2016 Build. Something that never actually made it to the contest of that year, because something went wrong that caused that entire project to go down the drain. A lot of hard work went to waste. But that's the story for another video that I'll hopefully make in the future. What I will say is, Sonic 1 NAC's boss fight was essentially, in its pinch mode, was meant to reference that boss fight that you just saw in flashback form from the scrapped build of Sonic DLCM. But hopefully I'll do a video on the scrapped build of DLCM. Without further ado, I think I should probably end this video here. But before I bring the video to the end, I want to give a quick update regarding Sonic 1 NAC. At this current point in time, NAC is not being worked on. Whilst it has been updated quite a bit since the Hacking Contest 2016 version, I haven't really been working on it as much, mainly because I've been focusing on Sonic 1 DLCM Remastered and a few other projects as well. There's a chance that Sonic 1 NAC may be put on hold for quite a while, and there's a chance that instead of continuing to work on it in its current state, I may just delete all the progress that has been done and start again from scratch. That way I'm able to build a new version of NAC from the ground up and be able to start all over again, because at the moment the current build and the current state of the disassembly of Sonic 1 NAC, it is a bit of a mess, and honestly I feel like at this point that I should, if I decide to work on NAC again, just restart from scratch, like restart from a fresh disassembly and start all over again, and that will give me a chance to redo everything that was done, even though a lot of the stuff that was done was a lot of work and was very time consuming. But I will keep the builds that I basically had over the years, and I may keep an archived copy of the original disassembly. But yeah, chances are NAC is going to be on hold for quite a long time, and if it ever does come back, there's a high chance that I may redo it completely from scratch. And if I redo it from scratch, that means things like version numbers, build numbers will reset back to 0, just like what happened with Sonic 1 DLCM, especially with the remastered version. Anyway, this video was way longer than I intended it to be, mainly because I did so much talking and explaining in it. Anyway, if you made it to this point without being bored, well done, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.